Hey everybody, Melissa here, the Unlikely Hiker. I hope everyone is doing good. I'm pretty sure it's been raining for like 17 days straight here in upstate New York. It is super soggy out, so we're doing indoor version today, and I've got something special for you today. I thought I would talk about my first aid kit. Whether you're medically trained or not, it does not change the importance of treating common emergencies that you're going to experience while hiking and backpacking. What you carry is just as important as what you don't carry. I'll explain more on that in just a minute. So my personal background, just so you know, I'm not completely talking out of my rear. I'm an LPN and an OEC technician. So I'm a low-paid nurse and a ski patroller. So just to cut to the chase, I'm pretty dangerous out on the trail because I have a little bit of training. There's a few outdoor certifications that you can get: wilderness first aid, wilderness first responder. OEC technician is outdoor emergency care. There's a lot of crossover in there. My training specifically is for really ski industry and the fact that we use actual equipment that's made for us out on the slopes. But medically speaking, a lot of it is just the same and it's all set up the same way. Just because I have medical training does not mean I'm going to carry a giant trauma bag in the backcountry, right? Because no one wants to carry that. I feel that it's my responsibility to treat acute, non-life-threatening medical emergencies in the backcountry, and I should be relatively prepared to do that. In a trauma situation or even a medical emergency, you need extrication. You need to get that person out. So the single most important thing you can carry for first aid in your kit is a Garmin. I feel like it's my responsibility to treat common acute medical and trauma emergencies while I'm out hiking and backpacking. It doesn't really matter how well prepared I am or medically trained if somebody fractures their femur or they're bleeding out because they sliced an artery open or impaled themselves on something, or if they stop breathing. No amount of gear that's in my first aid kit is going to save them. It's my responsibility to stabilize a person until the next level of care can get to them. There's always things in your pack that can double as something you can use in an emergency: bandanas, articles of clothing, shirts, tent flies, Z-seats. All of these things can come into play. So there's no sense in carrying a SAM splint if you carry a Z-seat, because both of them are going to serve almost the same purpose and can become a splint. We're not going to talk about that today. That is a different medical training. And if you have a desire to be trained as wilderness first aid or a wilderness first responder, I highly encourage you to go out and seek that certification, because the more people we have in the backcountry that can help out those who are in need, the better this world is going to be, really. So that being said, let's look at everything that is in my first aid kit. Now, to be clear, I don't bring very much, and that's despite the fact that I do have medical training. You don't need any special bag for your first aid kit. You might choose to go out and buy one of the pre-made first aid kits that they have commercially available. But keep in mind that there's a lot of things that are in those bags that you're just not going to need. A Ziploc bag is going to do just fine to make your own first aid kit. You could even get fancy and use a Sharpie or some red tape and put an X on it, whatever you like. If you want to get fancy, on Amazon, you can find little first aid pouches. They sell them, I believe, singly, or you can get a pack of multiples as well. And they're pretty affordable and inexpensive. If you have a lot of hiking friends, maybe a Christmas gift idea is to make a bunch of little first aid kits. I don't know. So in an emergency, the most important thing that you can do is stop the bleed, right? And when we talk about bleeding, we think about gloves, PPE. You want to make sure you always have at least one pair of gloves. This is just a pair of black nitrile gloves that I had laying around, so they're in here. I carry one pair of gloves with me. Everyone should have something. So you want to have a way to stop bleeding. You could always use a tourniquet. I'm definitely not going to backpack with that, but you could fashion a tourniquet out of a bandana, an article of clothing, and a stick or a piece of your trekking pole. That's one way to stop an arterial bleed. Another way to stop bleeding is something like this that's commercially available. It's Bleed Stop powder. You can get it at Walmart. I think it's like $6 for 2 packages. Or the ability to do any type of pressure dressing. You could use a bandana for this. You could use some gauze pads. And you could even use, this is just little pieces of KT tape with the gauze. Band-Aids don't generally work great for that, but you could use those too. You also want to have the ability to treat a smaller wound, not something that you're going to bleed out from, but something that really needs to be tended to sooner rather than later. Keep in mind, I am not talking about simple wounds. Generally speaking, I don't mess around with too many cuts that I get in the backcountry unless they are a little bit more severe. And if they're a little bit more severe, I'm going to want to rinse it with water. And I have these cool little pouches of bacitracin that you could use along with a gauze pad, Band-Aids, or again, the KT tape. You can also use Leukotape. Whatever you choose is perfectly fine. I use the KT tape to treat my blisters. You want to make sure you stop when you have a hot spot and treat it then. Don't wait until it's too late. You want to be able to treat allergies. I personally carry an EpiPen because I'm allergic to ground bees, but I also carry Benadryl. I also carry a little tiny package of hydrocortisone cream just to treat any itchy rashes that might be bothersome. You can get these little packages online. I just happened to get some from the hospital when I worked there. Oops, I shouldn't have said that out loud. It's also important to carry an assortment of medications for common ailments. So we already talked about the Benadryl, Imodium, Alka-Seltzer, because you never know, right? Tylenol, Advil, cold and flu. I have gotten sick out while I'm backpacking before. Advil PM, when you hurt and you need to sleep. Excedrin. Now, I get migraines, so I have to carry Excedrin. This also does have aspirin in it. It is more than 81 milligrams, which would be indicated for somebody with a heart attack, but any port in a storm. And like, side note, did anyone else not know that dollar store carries little boxes of these? So you get like 2 or 3 in a box? I had no idea. I happened to see them at the dollar store the other day, which is great because the Excedrin that was in my pack expired in 2011. Probably still would work, but that's pretty expired even for me. So I like the little ones because I only use them for backpacking. I tend to carry more ibuprofen, so I like the gel caps. I also know that that is the only blue medication that I personally take. Any personal medications, you want to make sure that you have it in a labeled bag and carry some of those as well because you don't want to run out of your prescriptions while you're hiking. Some other items that you might need for first aid that might not live in your first aid kit, any type of electrolyte powder or tabs, or maybe some salt for yourself or somebody else that you might come across who is dehydrated. And this has happened to me on multiple occasions. Side note, if you don't have a way to filter your water and you're dehydrated and you got the umbles, you know, the stumbles, mumbles, fumbles, and whatever else, drink the water because it's not worth dying because you're afraid to drink dirty water. I've drank raw water in the backcountry numerous times, never from a super sketchy source, but I would in an emergency. People make no sense. Oh, I'd rather die than drink dirty water. Okay. A couple dual use items that you probably have somewhere in your backpacking kit. A pin with dental floss. You could always pierce your blister. I choose not to, but you might want to do that if it was big enough. In a pinch, you could use super glue and or duct tape for a wound. Be very cautious with that, however. Alcohol swabs. I have alcohol swabs in my repair kit and in my dog's first aid kit. So if I needed to, I could use that, but I'm pretty sure most of us carry hand sanitizer as well. So that on a tissue or some other piece of relatively clean cloth is gonna be helpful if you do need to clean something out. Tweezers and scissors are very important to have. I carry this really cool Victorinox multi-tool. It does have scissors and tweezers. They're very tiny. That's not the only tweezers that I carry though, or scissors for that matter. I do supplement my own first aid kit with my dog. Your pet's first aid kit is at least as important as your own because remember, they're not gonna pipe up and say, oh, hey, you know, my paw, I think I did something to my paw, can you check it out? They're just gonna follow you to the ends of the earth and they're never gonna complain. So you need to check the condition of your pet's paws, overall well-being, Do they have any abrasions anywhere? Anything that you need to tend to immediately? And you should check them a couple times a day while you're out there. I do carry Pet Salve for Ruby. And this is for her paws. I can use it at the end of the day, the beginning of the day. It helps keep snow off of her paws as well in the winter, and it keeps her paws conditioned. I carry extra gauze sponges for her. She also has an alcohol swab. She has betadine swabs, just in case, you know, dogs, they run around obviously a lot different than we do. We have shoes protecting our feet. She does not have that for her paws. So this is an anti-infective that I can use for her, so I can minimize any chance of infection, at least while we're out there. Like I said, just first line of defense. Next stop would be the vet. I carry half a roll of vet wrap that I re-rolled onto something much smaller. And this also can create a pressure bandage for a human or a dog. You do need to be careful with this because it is possible to cut off circulation with this, but it's repositionable, reusable. This stuff is fantastic. I also have some hand sanitizing wipes. I'm not sure why, but yeah, these would be good for something. And I also carry 2 emergency dog booties for her. If she were to cut her paw, at 58 pounds, I am not able to carry her out. I do not have a dog sling for her at this point, so she might have to walk herself out. This gives her the ability to more comfortably walk on her paw. I would probably also share a sock with her, and I would fasten it to her paw with this, just to keep it on a little bit more. Ruby has her own Benadryl. Her dose is 3 pills. We have 4. Check with your vet on the dose for your dog. And also I have a full-size set of tweezers. These are fine nose tweezers, little tiny scissors, and little tiny mosquito forceps. The purpose of these for her is if she happens to come up on the wrong side of a porcupine, I can cut them, remove them. I could use this to pull something out if I needed to, but the little tiny tweezers that are in that multi-tool are not gonna work on a wiggling dog. So these give me the fine motor coordination to be able to really dig something out. It's a little bit heavier, but she is worth it. So that is my first aid kit and Ruby's first aid kit. Again, I don't carry a whole lot, although I didn't really discuss it. There are other things in my pack that I can use for first aid. If somebody is having a massive medical emergency, I am immediate and temporary care. Not much more, because when you're in the middle of the backcountry, I'm very limited as to what I can do regardless. No amount of supplies is necessarily going to help me. But my medical training definitely gives me an edge to help somebody while I'm out there. And I'm happy to do so, to be very honest. So I'm interested to know, what do you bring in your first aid kit? Mine is pretty minimal. I feel like a lot of people bring more than I do. I'm interested, what do you bring in your first aid kit that you did not see in my first aid kit? Or what are some tips, tricks, or hacks that you've used along the way that you've learned over the years? I'm interested to know, because we all bring different things to the table, and that's a good thing, because it would be a really boring world if we were all the same. So if you enjoyed this video and you got some value out of it, I would love it if you hit that like button and subscribe if you're not subscribed. That's what I got for you. Thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you out on the trail.